Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. I didn't follow her because I enjoy drama. I followed her because the math stopped adding up. For a week, the small things filed their silent protests. A perfume I never bought rode home on the air of her coat. A new laugh appeared in texts to Sana. Yet whenever I asked, Sana never knew the joke. And every night when the kettle sang, my wife lingered with her phone like she was eavesdropping on a secret inside it. None of that proves anything, I told myself. People have off weeks, people learn new laughs, but the numbers in my head kept arranging themselves into a ledger that looked wrong, and if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that ledgers don't correct themselves when you look away. Friday arrived with the usual traffic and a sky the color of old coins. I left work on time for once, hands hungry for the wheel, mind rehearsing a dozen versions of a gentle, ordinary evening. We'd eat biryani from the shop near the roundabout. We'd watch something silly. I'd ask if she wanted to take a day trip on Sunday, maybe somewhere with tall trees and a river that sounded like applause. By the time I reached our lane, the plan had softened into a comfortable shape. Her car wasn't outside. That too was normal sometimes. She often grabbed groceries on Fridays. But the grocery store wasn't on the route her car's GPS had taken the last time I checked the Find My app for the spare keys. I stood at our door with the keys in my palm, thumb hovering over the map. The blue dot rested on a main road that led toward the city center, then turned off into a cluster of commercial buildings where neon signs stack like mismatched books. When the dot slowed and stopped, it rested under a pin labeled with a red H. I didn't text. I didn't call. I locked the empty flat, drove toward that H, and told myself the whole way that I'd be embarrassed when I found a perfectly tame reason. Maybe a colleague got into trouble and needed a place to talk. Maybe she was delivering something on behalf of a friend. Maybe my faith in her deserved better than my curiosity. The hotel lobby was softly lit, decorated with plant walls and tasteful mirrors that reflected a life I didn't recognize. I stood among travelers and couples and people who had the kind of luggage that looked like it had opinions. I was just a man in a work shirt, with my heart pacing inside my chest like it wanted to escape through my throat. The elevator doors hissed open for a man with a cap. A woman answered a phone at the desk with a voice that had been trained to iron out wrinkles in other people's days. I opened the app again, let the blue dot breathe on the screen. It didn't move. 4 floors up. I told myself I wouldn't go further than the elevator. I told myself I'd go home, boil the rice, and lay the table as if nothing was wrong. I told myself 75 generous stories while I stood in that lobby. But my thumb still pressed the button, and the door still closed me inside a small silver room where all I could hear was the elevator's hum and my own breath. Floor 4 smelled like lemon polish and quiet. Down the corridor, a door clicked, and there she was, my wife, stepping backward out of a room as if she'd forgotten something inside. A man's hand appeared on her shoulder to guide her back in. The door drifted wider for a heartbeat, and in that slim rectangle of space the mathematics finally balanced. Her mouth lifted to his voice low and pleased, and the kind of kiss I'd only seen in mirrors when I rehearsed being a good husband belonged to another man. She didn't see me. Neither did he. The door closed on them like a curtain. It's strange. You expect a flooding panic, a snapping roar, a cinematic rush down the hallway. You expect 1,000 loud things. Instead, everything inside me turned delicate. I found myself counting the steps to the stairwell, trailing fingertips along the wallpaper to steady my walk, as if I were learning gravity again. Somewhere, past the vending machine, I discovered sadness has a texture. It's soft, almost polite, and it makes the lights look like they've traveled farther than usual to reach you. I reached the street and sat in my car for a long time without turning the key. The city moved around me, normal as bread. A couple debated a menu near the curb. A taxi beat a quick retreat around a bus. A teenager scolded a scooter that refused to start. Ordinary scenes, undisturbed. I think I envied them, not their lives, but their ignorance. At home, I boiled the rice because it seemed like an anchor. I shredded chicken and stirred in yogurt with a focus that surprised me. I set 2 plates. Every small action was a protest against the new truth. She arrived later with a smile that wobbled on one side, like a picture hung by a nail hammered wrong. Traffic was wild, she said, and then saw the table. You cooked? I should have called. I grabbed a bite with Santa. Sana, I said. Yeah. She hung her bag, kissed my cheek, and the scent of that unfamiliar perfume rose, delicate, betraying nothing about ingredients, only about someone else's hands. We ate. Or rather, I moved food around my plate and she told me about a client who loved italic fonts so much you'd think letters tilted only to please him. My brain wrote 2 scripts at once, the one where I asked and the one where I didn't. The second script would end with me curled inside a denial I couldn't respect. The first script would end somewhere unpredictable. I've never been a brave man exactly, but I have always been allergic to self-betrayal. After the dishes, I said, "How's Sana?" She blinked. "Good. Why?" "Because you spent the evening with her." I tried to make my voice casual. I almost succeeded. A hairline crack appeared in her smile. "We went to that new falafel place near the roundabout." "Which one?" "The green sign. They all have green signs." She laughed. It sounded clumsy, like shoes on wet tiles. "You know what I mean." I nodded. "You're right. I do." She grew quiet, studying me. The air tightened like a string tuned too high. "Why are you asking like that?" "Because I went to a hotel to pick up a client file," I said. "And I watched my wife enter into a hotel kissing her lover." The room became a still photograph. The clock continued its tiny job on the wall, yet somehow the tick-tock only underlined how little anything else moved. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she reached for the back of a chair as if the floor had inclined. "Wait," she said at last, and the word dragged a cart full of panic. "Wait. Please." "Please what?" "Please don't do this like this. Please don't say it like you've been waiting to punish me." "I haven't," I said. "I was waiting to be wrong." Her eyes shone. "I'm sorry." It's a barren sentence. "I'm sorry." It has soil, but no seeds. It can't grow anything unless you bury more in it. I wanted more. I didn't know what kind. I just knew I couldn't swallow a single word and feel better. "For how long?" I asked. "A month," she whispered. "Maybe a little more." "His name?" She closed her eyes. "Adnan." "And you met?" "At a conference. He was funny in those small ways you notice when you've been living with someone a long time and you think everything funny has already been told." She rubbed her thumb and forefinger together as if pinching an invisible thread. "It wasn't supposed to be anything. It sounded like a bar cliché in my head, even at the start. We kept telling ourselves it's just novelty, it'll cool down, and then we could say it was a phase we outgrew. Then it didn't cool down. I'm sorry." "You don't owe me a performance of remorse," I said, though perhaps I meant I couldn't carry it for both of us. "You owe me the truth. I never wanted to break us," she said. "I was lonely inside our routines. I didn't tell you because I knew if I said it, you'd hear it as a verdict. I didn't want a verdict. I wanted a comma." A pause. "That's not a comma," I said. "That's a period in the middle of a sentence you promised to finish with me." We didn't sleep much. We shared the bed, but not the night. She turned toward the wall. I lay staring at the ceiling and watched shapes form and vanish like a theater without sound. The air conditioner hummed. A neighborhood dog barked at what I hoped was the moon. Around 3, I understood that forgiveness is less like a door you open and more like a landscape you have to cross. You need water, you need shoes, you need a reason to keep walking once the horizon grows boring. Morning brought coffee and an apology that looked smaller in daylight. I said I needed space and an honest inventory. That meant phone records, messages, calendars. It also meant asking myself questions I'd managed to avoid for years. What had I ignored? Where did I withdraw and call it self-care? What did I allow to go unsaid because silence was easy? None of that excused betrayal, but it might explain the shape of the hole where it grew. We spent Saturday acting like 2 people trapped in the wrong scene. She hovered with helpfulness that felt purchased. I moved through rooms like a guest wearing the host's slippers. Around noon, she reached across the table with both hands. "Can we talk to someone?" she asked. "A counselor, a mediator, a wise auntie, a stranger with a clipboard, anyone." "We can," I said, "if what we're talking about has a name we both respect." "What would you call it?" "I don't know yet," I confessed. "I know I can't call it a small mistake." By evening I had done something unglamorous. I wrote lists, not of vengeance, not of speeches, but of practical tasks. Passwords to change, accounts to review, a conversation with my brother because I needed one person who would answer the phone at 4 a.m. if I called and wouldn't make it about himself. I also wrote questions for her, clear, non-trivial ones. When did you last see him? Did he know you were married before it turned into anything else? Were there promises? Did he say he loved you? Did you say it back? She answered most of them on Sunday afternoon. She cried quietly, answered plainly, and didn't edit my anger when it showed up, though she flinched when my voice climbed. I felt like a man trying to rebuild a bridge while standing on it over a river without guards. You work, but you don't trust your footing. You reach, but you don't know if your hand will land on wood or nothing. On Monday I went to work because routine is a rope you can hold when everything else is slippery. The office smelled like printer ink and aim. My boss asked about the weekend, and I said, quiet, because one syllable was all I could carry. I made a spreadsheet. I answered emails that didn't matter and one that did. I watched the clock pretend it didn't care about me. That evening, when I came home, she handed me her phone. I blocked him, she said without drama. I told him I made a wreck and I'm going to try to repair it here. Did he accept that? He sent 3 question marks, she said, voice thin. Then a long message about how we deserve to be happy and how we can't pretend the past month didn't happen. I didn't answer. Good, I said, though the word tasted like metal. We need boundaries. We tried to set rules. No secrets, no new stories to cover old ones. Daily conversations that weren't just about logistics. We agreed to choose a counselor by Tuesday. We agreed on no more accidental meetings. No more slippery phrases like, it just happened. We agreed to try, which is a promise that's easy to say and hard to keep because it asks you to lift more than you think you can every day. On Tuesday morning, news traveled faster than our intentions. A colleague of hers posted a photo from a team lunch, and in the back of the frame, blurry but unmistakable, stood the man from the hotel. I would have passed the picture without a second glance, but she went, pale when she saw it. She closed the app and pressed the phone flat on the table. What? I asked. Nothing, she said too quickly. Just nothing. Don't, I said softly. No more nothing. He said he'd give me space, she murmured. He said he would. He wasn't supposed to be there. At a restaurant your colleagues go to? No, she said, picking at a napkin. At my bus stop. Did he come there? She nodded. This morning. He said he didn't want to be the villain in our story. He said villains are just characters with bad publicists. He said he could explain it all if I let him talk. I told him I couldn't. He asked for 5 minutes. I left. Did he touch you? The question left me before I knew it was ready. No, she said quickly. He didn't try anything like that. He looked tired. I left. Next time call me, I said, and immediately felt the awkwardness of appointing myself her guard when I barely recognized the country I was trying to protect. I will, she said, and for a moment our hands found each other on the table, not as saviors, but as witnesses. Tuesday night, the city wore rain like a loose shawl. The streets smelled brand new. I slept eventually, a shallow, unreliable sleep that breaks like cheap glass. When I woke around 2, the house felt like a stage where the actors had gone home but left the lights warm. I walked through rooms for no reason. I opened the window and let the cool air touch my face. Somewhere in the distance a siren rose, then faded. Somewhere else, a motorbike boasted about its engine. 3 days after the hotel, I had an appointment near the old ring road. I took the long route back, detouring past the hillocks outside town where wild grass grows in stubborn, optimistic patches. It's a place where teenagers practice speeches to the sky, where dog walkers invent new paths, where dust paints your shoes a color you don't own. As my car rolled along, a police van idled by the side of an unmarked track. 2 officers stood talking in the reluctant sunshine. A third paced along the edge of the valley that cuts through the earth there, more trench than cliff, more secret than spectacle. I wouldn't have stopped, except that life has a sense of theater, and sometimes it cues you whether you want a scene or not. A 4th officer waved the car behind me past and lifted his hand toward me. I braked, rolled down my window, and asked if there was a diversion. Not exactly, he said. Just take it slow. Something happened down there. What sort of something? He didn't answer directly. He tilted his head toward the valley where dirt darkens to a deeper shade, the way skin does where it remembers old bruises. You live around here? In town, I said. Is it safe? Stay on the main road and you'll be fine, he said. We found someone. Then, perhaps noticing the way my fingers tightened on the steering wheel, he added with a practiced calm, He's alive. I nodded like someone for whom the word meant nothing. But it did. It carried a whole library of meanings. Alive meant consequences. Alive meant questions. Alive meant a story that would not politely end at the border of our kitchen table. Do you know his name? I asked, too quickly, then heard what my own voice revealed. The officer's gaze sharpened. Do you? I hesitated a second too long. Then I told the truth, the cautious version. My wife works nearby. She mentioned a colleague who's been causing trouble. A man called Adnan. If that's him, I want to know if she's safe. The officer said nothing for a moment that stretched swiftly. Finally, he shook his head, neither yes nor no, just the gesture of someone not authorized to bless a rumor. Drive on, he said. Let the professionals do their jobs. I drove on, but I didn't leave the scene. I carried it with me. The valley came with me into the car. The slow knot of grass against wind came with me. The word alive came with me, heavy as luggage you don't remember packing. At the next turn, I pulled over again and set my forehead to the steering wheel. It smelled like plastic and sun. I thought of my lists. I thought of all the rules we'd drafted and how they look like wisdom until life throws a different test. By the time I reached home, my wife was sitting on the floor of our living room with her phone on the rug and her hands over her mouth, as if she'd tried to swallow a scream and it had grown too large to fit. She looked up at me with eyes that were suddenly learning fear. Adnan, she said, voice nearly gone. He was found beaten in a dark valley. They say he's conscious and he's refusing to talk. People are already making stories in the group chat. Some are saying it's a robbery, some are saying it's a warning, some are saying that you... I sat down opposite her. The air pressed close. That I what? That you did it, she whispered, the accusation not in her voice but in the shadow around it. They're saying the husband found out and decided to be dramatic. I didn't touch him, I said. I haven't seen him. I never even knew his last name until now. I know, she said immediately. Then, as if the words didn't feel strong enough, she crawled closer on her knees and took my hands. Her grip shook. I know, I know, I know. Please believe me when I say I know. And please don't leave me alone in this. I will do whatever you ask. I will answer anything you ask. I will confess every unflattering thing I did and didn't do. I will sit with every hurt. Just, please give me a chance. Outside, the late afternoon stretched thin and strange, like milk pulled across a surface with a knife. In the kitchen, the tap dripped, measuring time in hesitant syllables. My phone vibrated with a message from my brother. Call me. Are you okay? Another vibration, a number I didn't know. We should talk. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I pictured the valley, the officers, the wind riffing through wild grass. I pictured a man on the ground under that same bright wind, not telling anyone what happened. There are moments when a life splits like a road at a fork. Signs point both ways. Neither route looks merciful. On one path, there's anger that knows how to make noise. On the other, there's patience that refuses medals because it looks like doing nothing until the end proves it was doing the hardest thing. I didn't know which way I'd go yet. I only knew the ground felt unsteady, and my wife's hands were holding mine like the last two ropes on a bridge we might still cross if we didn't look down. Okay, I said finally, because it was the only word I trusted. We'll talk to the police. We'll talk to a counselor. We'll not talk to anyone who writes rumors, and we will not lie. Not to them, not to each other, not to ourselves. Do you understand? She nodded, tears tracking the careful path tears always choose. I understand. And until I understand what happened and what didn't, I said, forcing my voice to live somewhere between fury and mercy. We pause. No decisions, no announcements, no performances for anyone who isn't us. Okay, she echoed. We sat there, hands connected, phones face down, the room listening. Somewhere inside me, a quiet, stubborn place began to shape a plan. Not of retribution, but of clarity, of questions, of the kind of patience that hurts. I didn't know then that clarity can look like revenge to people who prefer fog. I didn't know that patience can look like cruelty to people who want quick absolution. I only knew that the next hours would matter in ways I would feel for years. I stood, helped her to her feet, and reached for our shoes. "Let's go," I said. "Where?" "To tell the truth," I said. "Wherever it takes us." 3 days after the hotel, nothing in my world felt steady. Whispers ran through our neighborhood and across her office group chats. Everyone had a theory about Adnan's condition, about how he ended up in that valley, about who might have wanted to silence him. Some people looked at me with pity, others with suspicion. Rumor travels faster than any truth, and in that race I was always a few steps behind. We went together to the station. I told the officers exactly where I was, what I saw, what I did not do. My wife sat beside me trembling, telling them she'd ended things and begged for space. The officers listened, taking notes, measuring every pause. They asked if I had spoken to Adnan before. I said no. They asked if I had threatened him. I said no. And they asked the question that cut me deeper than all the others. "Do you still want to live with your wife after this?" I didn't answer right away. My wife's eyes searched mine, full of fear but also something desperate, a plea to be allowed to rebuild. At last I said, "Right now I want the truth. Where we go after depends on whether it's strong enough to carry us." That seemed to satisfy them. We left without handcuffs but not without shadows. At home she dropped to her knees in front of me, clinging to my hands as though they were her last prayer. "Please," she said, "don't let this end us. I made a mistake, but I choose you. I want you." Her voice cracked under the weight of her tears. For a long time, I said nothing. Revenge had been written into the eyes of the people who whispered. But I had never raised a hand to Adnan. My revenge was standing there in silence, letting her feel the full gravity of the trust she'd broken. And in that silence, I saw her break more than she ever had under my questions. Finally, I pulled her to her feet. "If we rebuild, it won't be easy. It will take years, maybe longer. If you falter, if you lie again, there will be nothing left." She nodded, gripping me tighter. "I'll prove it. I'll walk through every storm, if it means standing beside you at the end." And that night, for the first time since the hotel, I believed her. Not because of her words, but because of her fear of losing me. In that fear, I found my revenge, and in choosing patience over rage, I found the only path forward. The story didn't end with violence, it ended with truth and the hard, fragile promise of starting again.